Story 1. I should have known something was wrong when the forest suddenly stopped breathing. One moment, birds were chirping above me and squirrels rustled in the trees. The next, everything went quiet, too quiet. It wasn't just silence. It felt like the whole forest had been cut off from life. No wind in the leaves, no insects buzzing, nothing. It was as if the woods were holding their breath, waiting for me to notice. I froze on the trail, grip tightening on my hiking pole. I had come here to spend the weekend alone, camping and clearing my head. I had found a rough trail deep in the forest and thought it would be exciting to explore. But now, as that suffocating silence wrapped around me, the excitement turned into a knot of fear in my stomach. "Hello?" I called, just to break the stillness. For a second, there was nothing. Then, from deep within the trees, something repeated me. "Hello?" But the voice wasn't mine. It was slower, lower, distorted in a way that made my skin crawl. I laughed nervously to myself. Maybe it was an echo or my mind playing tricks. "Is anyone out there?" I tried again. From far away, it came back. Out there." This time, it dragged the words too long, twisting them into something inhuman. I pulled out my phone, desperate to get a GPS location so I could head back to camp. The screen lit up, showing 97% battery. Relief washed over me, but before I could open the map, the phone flickered and died in my hands. A dead black screen stared back at me. Cold panic scratched at the back of my skull. I stuffed the useless phone into my pocket and started walking quickly. The trail stretched ahead, but no matter how far I went, something felt wrong. Trees looked the same. My landmarks, rocks, fallen logs, markings I mentally noted, all disappeared. The forest had no landmarks anymore. Then I saw it. Up ahead, in a small clearing, stood a cabin. At first, I felt relief. Maybe someone lived here. Maybe I could get directions, or at least rest and gather myself. But as I stepped closer, dread poured into me. The cabin was old and decaying, leaning sideways like a dying man. The roof sagged, one corner nearly touching the ground. The windows were dark hollows, gaping like open mouths. And the door, it was splintered, covered in long, fresh claw marks, as though something had tried desperately to get inside. I hesitated. There shouldn't have been a cabin here. I'd studied the maps online. This forest was supposed to be empty for miles. Still, the unease of being watched grew stronger, prickling the back of my neck. Maybe inside I'd find a phone, a radio, something. Against every instinct screaming in my head, I pushed the creaking door open. The air inside was stale, thick with the smell of rot and old wood. Dust floated in weak rays of light through broken shutters. Animal skins, cracked and stiff, hung on the walls. The furniture was broken, covered in mold. Then I noticed the floor. Claw marks. Dozens of them dragged across the wooden planks, deep enough to splinter the floorboards. It looked like something, or someone, had been dragged violently across the room. I stumbled back, heart racing, and turned to leave. The forest outside seemed darker now, shadows stretching unnaturally long. I pushed myself to run back the way I had come, but after minutes of running, lungs burning and legs shaking, I broke through the trees and found myself staring at the same clearing, the same cabin, the same claw-marked door. I gasped, stumbling to a stop. I spun around, choosing another direction, sprinting into the woods. Branches whipped my face, roots caught my boots, but I kept going. I didn't care. I just had to get away. My legs nearly collapsed when the forest opened up again. But there it was. The cabin. Waiting. This time, the door hung slightly open. I knew it hadn't been open before. I hadn't left it like that. "Please stop," I whispered under my breath. From deep in the woods behind me, I heard it. "Please, stoop!" It was closer now. Much closer. I staggered back, eyes glued to the cabin. My mind screamed at me not to go in, but every path led me back here. The forest was playing with me, forcing me toward it. The door creaked wider on its own. Inside, the shadows seemed thicker, waiting. I didn't want to move, but a terrible realization sank in. I wasn't going to escape. The silence around me pressed harder, crushing my chest, making it difficult to breathe. The distorted voice whispered again, impossibly close, almost at my ear this time, repeating every shuddering breath I took. And then, from inside the cabin, something stepped into the doorway. Its shape wasn't right. Too tall, too angular. Its movements were jerky, like a puppet pulled by tangled strings. I screamed, my voice breaking the silence, and from every corner of the forest, the screams came back, distorted, multiplied, mocking me. The last thing I remember before my world spun into blackness was the sound of footsteps, many of them coming from inside that rotting cabin, and the door slamming shut. Story 2. I swear the sun was stolen from us that night. One moment we were laughing, my wife, my 2 kids and I, walking back from a picnic spot deep in the woods. The sky still glowed with the colors of late afternoon. But by the time we packed up the blanket, the light seemed to bleed away unnaturally fast. The forest around us dimmed, shadows stretching longer than they should, until it looked like twilight had slammed down in seconds. At first, we told ourselves it was fine. We had a trail, we had flashlights, and we had each other. But as we walked, the trees closed in, and the darkness grew thick, as if the night was falling twice as heavy as usual. My daughter Sarah held my hand tighter. "Daddy, why is it so dark already?" I smiled to comfort her, but inside, unease gnawed at me. My watch said 6:20 p.m. The sun shouldn't have dipped this fast. We should have still had half an hour of light. My wife flicked on a flashlight, and the beam cut through the dark, but something about the way the shadows recoiled made my skin crawl. That's when we saw the first eyes. 2 glowing white orbs floated in the distance between the trees, reflecting the beam. I thought it was an animal at first, but as we kept moving, another pair appeared on our left, then 2 more on the right. Dozens of eyes blinked into being, watching us, always distant, never approaching. Silence ruled the forest. No insects, no wind, just our footsteps crunching on the leaf litter, surrounded by those unblinking stares. My son whispered, "Dad, why aren't they moving?" I had no answer. We kept walking, trying to follow the faint line of the trail. But after what felt like an hour, it became clear we weren't heading anywhere familiar. The path bent strangely, new roots clawed across the ground, and even the trees seemed to change shape when we weren't looking. It was impossible, like the woods were alive, shifting to confuse us. My wife suggested we stop. "If we keep walking in circles, we'll wear ourselves out. Let's just build a fire and wait it out until morning." It sounded reasonable. So we gathered sticks, struck matches, and soon a fire crackled between us. The faint warmth eased the chill sinking into my bones, but our relief was short-lived. The smoke didn't rise normally. It curled and bent, twisting into shapes, faces of people crying, screaming, some with mouths stretched wide, silent as they writhed apart. My wife gasped and grabbed my arm, but the children didn't seem to notice, thank God. I told them it was just the way smoke moved, but I knew this wasn't right. I tried to reassure everyone, told stories, cracked weak jokes, anything to keep the kids from breaking apart. But every few minutes, I'd glance up and see those glowing eyes watching us from the tree line. Never moving closer, never backing away. Just waiting. For what, I couldn't guess. Then the ground started to shift. At first, I thought I was dizzy. But no, the roots beneath the leaves were writhing, moving almost like veins under skin. My son stumbled as the tree roots shifted under his foot. When I pulled him away, the ground rippled behind us like it was trying to drag him back. I decided we couldn't stay. "We're leaving," I said firmly, trying to hide the quake in my voice. We doused the fire, grabbed our bags, and picked what we thought was the direction home. But every step grew harder. Roots tangled around our ankles, branches moved to block our way. It was as if the forest wanted to keep us in. Panic set in when I realized we were circling again. No matter how far we pushed, the same hollow tree appeared in front of us. Its trunk split open like a screaming mouth. 3 times we passed it. 3 times my wife's voice cracked with fear. "Why can't we get out?" she whispered. I didn't know. But the eyes had multiplied, hundreds now. Glowing dots ringed us in layers, stretching back through the trees until it looked like the whole forest had awoken to watch. We tried shouting for help, but the sound never carried right. Our voices came back to us twisted like echoes spoken by something else. By midnight, my daughter sobbed in my arms, exhausted. My wife clutched our son, both of them trembling. I tried to stay brave, but I felt it too, that crawling awareness deep in my skull that we didn't belong here, that the woods themselves had decided to claim us. The ground pulsed under us again, and I swear I felt it, like a heartbeat, deep below. Roots wound gently around my boots, pulling me toward the hollow tree, pulling all of us. I tried to fight it, hacking at them with a stick, but for every one that snapped, 3 more slithered out from the soil. The last thing I remember clearly was the fire we tried lighting again, desperate for light. But instead of smoke, flames rose higher than possible, forming faces of those same crying souls. Loud, silent mouths opened wider, wider, until the fire blew out, plunging everything into black. We were still surrounded by eyes, watching, waiting, and then the trees leaned closer together as if the forest itself was closing. That was the moment I realized. The woods weren't trapping us by accident. They were eating us, slowly. And no matter where we tried to run, there was no outside anymore. Story 3. I woke up to silence, thick, unnatural silence. The fire had burned down to gray ash, and the cold clung to my skin. Around me, our tents sagged in the morning dew. But something was wrong. I couldn't hear the steady breathing of Ryan, who had been sleeping beside me in his own tent. At first, I thought he'd gone to relieve himself in the woods. But then I saw it. His tent was wide open, his sleeping bag tossed aside as if he'd vanished in the middle of the night. "Ryan?" I called out softly. No answer. My voice felt too small for the overwhelming quiet that hung in the trees. Slowly, the others, Emma and James, stirred awake. As I told them Ryan was gone, dread crawled across their faces. We checked the campground. There, in the damp dirt, were Ryan's boot prints leading deeper into the forest. We followed. The prints started normally, heavy, clear, dragging slightly on his left foot the way Ryan always walked. But 100 feet in, the boot prints ended. In their place were barefoot tracks, sunken into the wet mud. Emma froze. Why would he take off his shoes in the woods? James looked pale, shaking his head. He didn't. Something's not right. That was when we heard it. A scream, distant, sharp, tearing through the morning air. Ryan's voice. My stomach dropped, and without thinking, we ran toward the sound. But halfway there, the scream twisted into something else. Laughter. Not Ryan's laughter. Something warped, drawn out, echoing unnaturally through the trees. We stopped running, terrified, as the laughter faded into silence again. The forest swallowed it whole. We argued whether to go back, but none of us could stomach the thought of leaving Ryan. So we pushed deeper, following the barefoot tracks, until the trail veered off into something far worse. The trees here were scarred. Strips of bark had been peeled away, exposing pale wood like bone. And hanging from the branches, we saw them, clothes, Ryan's clothes, his jacket twisted over a branch like a macabre flag, his jeans hanging limply, torn and stained, his shirt nailed through its sleeve to the bark of a tree. Emma covered her mouth with her hands to stop a scream. James muttered curses under his breath. We were too afraid to keep going, so we stumbled back to camp before night fell. None of us wanted to speak, but all three of us decided to stay awake by the fire, taking shifts. I was the last to doze off, staring into the flames, shaking with exhaustion. I don't know when I finally passed out, but I jolted awake to Emma shaking me violently. "He's gone!" she cried. At first I didn't understand, but she meant James. His tent was empty, his backpack still there. Just like Ryan, my mouth went dry. Without thinking, we looked for tracks, and sure enough, a trail of footprints led from camp into the trees. The same transition. His sneakers first, then bare feet pressed into the mud. "Don't!" I begged Emma as she tried to follow. "We can't keep chasing them. It's not them anymore." She was trembling, tears streaked down her face. "We can't leave them." I wanted to say something, anything, that made sense, but my voice failed me. The only thing I knew was the forest was taking us one by one, waiting until we slept. That night, Emma and I huddled together by the remains of the fire. Every snap of a twig made us jump. The darkness pressed down thick, crushing. Somewhere out there, laughter rippled through the trees again, sometimes sounding like James, sometimes like Ryan, sometimes like something else completely. We didn't speak. We didn't dare. The second night broke me. I tried to stay awake, but exhaustion dragged me down like chains. When I opened my eyes again, the fire was cold, and Emma was gone. Her blanket lay crumpled where she had slept. A line of footprints led away into the black woods, shoes first, then bare feet. I followed. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought I could save her, or maybe I didn't want her to be alone. The forest told me which way to go, the teeth of branches clawing at me, the faint glow of something pale moving between the trees. That's when I saw them. Ryan, James, Emma, all hanging in the trees, their clothes shredded, skin pale as bone. But their faces, oh God, their faces. Each mouth stretched into a grotesque grin, eyes glowing faintly with the same inhuman light I'd seen swirling in the forest at night. They watched me, lips twitching, smiles growing wider. And then they laughed. That same twisted sound. I ran. I didn't care where. The trees bent unnaturally, roots rising to trip me, branches snapping as if to herd me deeper. No matter where I turned, the laughter followed, circling me from all directions. Now, I'm alone. The forest breathes in ways forests shouldn't, pulling me further in with every step. I know what's coming. It's patient. When night falls again, it will be my turn. And soon, someone else will camp here. They'll wake at dawn, wondering where I went, and the cycle will begin again. Because these woods don't just hold the lost, they make us part of them. Story 4. I knew something was terribly wrong the second time my watch struck 8. We had gone to sleep in our tent after a long day of hiking, expecting to wake to the orange glow of dawn. But when I opened my eyes, it was still pitch black outside. At first, I thought maybe it was the middle of the night, but my watch read 7:12 a.m. By the time I nudged my wife awake, it showed 7:45. Soon after, 8:20. Morning had come, and yet the darkness clung, thick and absolute. The forest felt smothered beneath it. No faint gray in the sky, no hint of light pushing through the canopy. Just a blackness that seemed to swallow everything whole. Our dog, Ranger, whined restlessly and scratched at the tent flap. "It's morning," I told my wife, glancing again at my watch. "But it's still night out here." She opened the flap, and the dog darted into the dark, barking fiercely. His barks echoed back in strange ways, not like normal echoes. One came from the left, then another deeper bark from the right, and another ahead of us. The sound of the same dog, coming from 3 directions at once. My wife gripped my arm. "He's only one dog." The hairs on my neck rose, and I fumbled for our lantern. Its small yellow glow cast trembling circles across the trees. At first it gave me comfort. Then I saw them. Shapes. Between the trunks, They flickered. Too tall, far too tall, stretching nearly twice a man's height. Thin silhouettes, bending and unfolding as though their bones weren't set right. Every time I tried to look straight at one, it vanished, melting back into the dark. But when I turned my gaze again, there they were, swaying silently between the trees. Ranger barked again, only this time, I swear one of the barks came from right behind us. We spun, lantern glowing desperately, but saw nothing. "We need to get out of here," I whispered. My wife nodded, pale-faced. We broke camp in a panic, stuffing our things carelessly, leaving half of it behind. I told myself we just had to follow the path back toward the road, but the longer we walked, the heavier the dark pressed in until it felt like thick cloth covering our heads. And then came the snapping. At first it was faint, a twig snapping somewhere behind us, then another, deliberate crunch of branches, too heavy to be a deer or fox. Footsteps. They were keeping pace with us. Every time we stopped, the sound stopped too. Each time we moved faster, the snapping followed. Ranger growled low, ears pricked, but then whimpered and walked closer to us, tail tucked. That terrified me more than anything, our fearless dog, cowering. "Did you see that?" My wife gasped suddenly. The lantern glow had briefly caught one of the figures too close this time. Just for a second. It bent low, almost touching the ground, its limbs folding unnaturally like an insect's. Its face or lack of one swirled in my memory. I couldn't understand what I saw, only that it was wrong. We hurried, nearly running now. The path twisted endlessly. No matter how far we went, dawn never came. The snapping grew louder, closer. Not just behind us now, but around us. Right, left, back again. Sometimes two at once. "Run!" I hissed, grabbing her hand and pulling. We sprinted through the trees, the lantern swinging wildly, shadows leaping and distorting. Ranger yelped, keeping pace as best he could. The sounds followed, sticks cracking, leaves crushed, branches tearing, like an army of invisible hunters right on our heels. I could feel the weight of something towering over us, stretching long limbs just outside the circle of our light. Our breath came ragged, legs aching, but we couldn't stop. At one point, the lantern beam caught the ground, and I swore I saw footprints. Not ours. Long, deep gouges in the dirt, wider than human feet, pointing in every direction, circling us. "This isn't working," my wife gasped. "We're not getting out." Her words sank into my gut like ice, because truthfully I felt it too. We had been running for what felt like hours, but everything looked the same. Endless black trees, endless dark sky. Time on the watch slipped past senselessly. 9:30, 10, 10:45, still no sun. Then, cutting through the chaos, Ranger bolted ahead into the dark, barking again. This time his bark didn't echo strangely, it was sharp, direct. He'd found something. We stumbled after him, clinging to our last hope. The snapping behind us exploded louder, branches breaking like bones, closing in. My throat burned with panic. And then we saw it, his light-colored fur ahead, illuminated faintly in the lantern glow. Relief surged in me, but when we got closer, I froze. It wasn't Ranger, it was him, but stretched, warped, his body taller, legs too long, head bent at the wrong angle. His mouth opened, but the bark that came out split into three, echoing across the woods like before. My wife screamed, dropping the lantern. Darkness swallowed us, broken only by faint shapes. Too many shapes, bending and swaying in every direction, snapping all around, closer. And then, in the pitch black, right at my ear, came the sound of Ranger barking again, followed by something else. A whisper, low and stretched, repeating the same sound. Not quite a bark anymore, almost a laugh. That was when I knew the sun wasn't coming back. Not for us. Not ever. Story 5. I knew the forest was playing tricks on us the moment the path disappeared under my feet. We hadn't wandered far, just a short hike after a picnic. My wife carried our little boy, and my teenage daughter walked beside me, teasing her brother like always. But the trail we thought we were following twisted strangely, and by the time we tried to backtrack, it was gone. Trees pressed in on every side. No markers, no sunlight breaking the canopy, just endless green and shadow. We walked for hours before the shadows stretched longer. My son whined, tired of walking, and I was about to suggest resting when we saw it. A cabin. It leaned crooked among the trees, its roof sagging, door hanging on rusted hinges. The place looked abandoned 100 years ago, but what froze me wasn't the broken shutters or the smell of damp rot. It was the fact that it shouldn't have been there at all. "I don't like this," my wife whispered. But with the kids hungry and darkness falling, we had no choice. I pushed the door open, and the hinges screamed. The inside smelled old, sour. Dust floated through beams of weak light filtering from the holes in the roof. Broken furniture lay piled in the corners. But then we saw the walls, mounted heads, dozens of them. Deer, elk, even a bear, each stretched stiff and displayed like hunting trophies. But what made my skin crawl were the eyes. Not glass, not fake, real. Human eyes staring out of animal faces. I thought at first it had to be a trick of the light. But when I leaned closer, the eyes reflected me. Wet, glistening, alive. My daughter recoiled. "Dad, they're looking at us." I swallowed hard, forcing a nervous laugh. "It's just taxidermy. Let's not scare ourselves." But then one of the deer heads turned, ever so slightly, to follow my wife as she carried our son across the room. My blood ran cold. We lasted the night because we had no choice. The children were too tired to move again, and leaving meant facing the dark forest blind. So we spread blankets across the dusty floor, trying to ignore the glassy stare of those impossible eyes. That's when the scratching started. At first, faint, like branches brushing the walls. Then sharper, claws dragging against wood, coming from inside the cabin itself. "Dad," my daughter hissed, gripping my arm. "It's in the walls." The sound circled the cabin, scuttling from corner to corner, low and fast, like something alive trapped between the boards. At intervals it stopped, only to thump directly beneath where we lay. No one slept that night. By morning, my son whimpered for sunlight, for escape. I rose quickly, desperate to get them out, but when I pulled at the door, it didn't move, not locked, not stuck. It felt as though something pressed back from the other side, keeping us in. "Open it!" my wife cried, her voice sharpening with panic. I threw my weight against it again and again, but it wouldn't budge. "Try the window!" my daughter shouted. I stumbled toward it, wiped away the dust, and froze. The forest outside wasn't ours anymore. Gone were the trees we had walked through. Instead, twisted black trunks leaned toward the cabin, bark rippled like rotting skin. The ground was littered with bones, and faint shapes slithered between the shadows. Worst of all, the sky was wrong, an endless red haze with no sun, no clouds, just a swollen, dim glow that pressed like blood behind glass. "No," I whispered. "This isn't where we came from." "Dad." My daughter pulled at me urgently. "The heads, they're moving." I turned slowly. One by one, the mounted trophies were shifting. Their jaws creaked open, teeth yellow, saliva dripping down wooden plaques. Their eyes twitched and rolled, locking onto us like prey. Deer heads groaned. A wolf snarled, its once dead lips peeling back into a snarl. The scratching in the walls grew louder, more frantic, until boards bulged outward as if something was clawing its way from inside the house itself. My son screamed when the bear head dropped from the wall entirely and landed upright, rolling forward on unseen legs that weren't legs at all. "Stay behind me!" I shouted, grabbing a broken chair leg as a weapon. My voice shook. useless against the rising cacophony of snarls, groans, and scratches. The door rattled violently, knocking this time as though something impatient outside demanded entry. And then I understood. We hadn't found the cabin. The cabin had found us. It had lured us in, let us see enough to fear, then locked us inside somewhere that wasn't our world anymore. The scratching turned to pounding. Boards cracked. From between the walls, pale fingers, too many to be human, pushed through the wood, stretching, reaching. I swung the chair leg wildly, screaming at my wife to protect the children. But I knew, from the very moment the first human eye blinked from an animal skull, that escape wasn't meant for us. The forest outside shifted closer through the window, trees bending, pressing against the cabin like ribs closing over a heart. We weren't lost anymore. The cabin had claimed us, and by nightfall, our eyes would join the walls. Story 6. I knew something was wrong the instant the forest gave me back what I had already walked through. It was supposed to be a simple day hike with my kids. Just me, my 13-year-old daughter Lily, and my younger son Ben. They'd begged after seeing pictures of the nature trails online, broad paths, safe routes, and a massive oak tree known for strange carvings left decades ago. We started in good spirits, backpacks full of snacks and water, the morning air crisp. The trail wound gently, sunlight breaking through the canopy. Everything seemed perfect, until Lily tugged my sleeve. "Dad, didn't we pass this already?" I frowned. Ahead of us, rising from the dirt path, was the very same oak tree from earlier. It was unmistakable, its trunk massive and gnarled, the rough bark carved with looping symbols, marks that looked like circles within circles, spirals twisting inward with no end. "No," I told her firmly, though my voice wavered. "There has to be another like it." But deep down, I knew. Oak trees don't repeat themselves like copy and paste. We changed direction, took a different branch of the path, walked for nearly half an hour. My shirt clung with sweat. Ben complained he was thirsty. But when the brush cleared, the oak stood in front of us again, still laden with its impossible symbols. The second time I told myself it was a mistake. By the third, I stopped pretending. No matter which way we walked, the same tree waited, like the forest reset itself each loop. Lily stopped speaking entirely, her hand gripping mine tighter. By the fourth circle, something worse happened. We came to the oak tree again, but the bags I had left propped against it earlier, gone. Our water bottles, too, as though the forest had peeled them away when we weren't looking. Ben tried to run, frustration spilling over in tears, but I caught him fast. My fear was colder, sharper than his panic, because when I glanced back, the tree had shifted again. Its symbols were different. Still spirals, but now tighter, sharper, almost vibrating like they had been freshly cut. We didn't stop moving, trapped in hopeless circles. The fifth time we approached the oak, Lily squeezed so hard my fingers ached. "Dad," she whispered, barely breathing. "Who is that?" I froze. Ahead of us, walking on the trail just beyond the tree, were figures. 3 of them, a tall man with 2 children. Their shapes blurred faintly, like heat waves over asphalt, but there was no mistaking it. They were us. I shouted before I could stop myself. "Hey, wait! Who are you?" The tall man up ahead stiffened. Slowly, deliberately, he turned his head. And in a voice that was mine, but hollow, distant, wrong, he answered, "Who are you?" My skin went ice cold. My kids clung to me, trembling as the replicas paused just out of reach, and then walked on, drifting deeper into the woods. Every time we tried to catch them, they stayed the same distance ahead, always just beyond us. The sun faded unnaturally fast after that, light bleeding away like ink poured into water. Shadows thickened, branches clawed at us, and the looping trail no longer pretended to feel familiar. It pulsed, alive, twisting against reality. We circled again, each loop shorter, faster, bringing us to the oak with no effort, as if the forest wanted to collapse the distance itself. On the sixth time, I realized what looked carved into its bark wasn't symbols anymore. They were faces. Faces stretched and spiraled, mouths open wide in agony, etched deeper each time we returned. Ben was sobbing, Lily quiet with shock. I felt my sanity press thin, like paper ready to tear. The replicas returned that night. Not far this time, standing right beyond the oak, still blurry, still indistinct. But I could see more detail now. The man's face, my face, was split open at the mouth, nearly reaching the ears. A grotesque smile carved too wide. The children's eyes were pits, hollow and black. Their mouths opened as one, and my voice came out again, dragged long, distorted, echoing through the trees. Dad. Dad. My real children clamped their ears shut, crying against my chest. I tried screaming at the figures to leave us alone, to give us a way out, but the forest only echoed my rage back. Every word I shouted came bellowing from the replicas in front of me, turning my own voice into an enemy. When I tried silence, they stood still, waiting. When I tried to run, branches snapped behind me, an endless circle pulling me back. On the seventh pass, the oak was closer than ever. Too close. The faces carved into it writhed now, mouths groaning, eyes bulging, stretching against the wood as if alive beneath the bark, as if waiting to pull us inside. The replicas stopped walking away this time. Instead, they turned toward us, grinning with mouths split wide, and in perfect unison, my broken, echoing voice whispered back through them, "Come home." For more stories like this, like, share and subscribe, Goofy Horror.